The brilliant rays of the sun cascaded upon the international training grounds, transforming sand and metal surfaces into a shimmering tapestry of gold. The intense heat created a subtle haze that danced across the horizon, distorting the air with waves of warmth that seemed almost alive. The expansive field had been meticulously prepared for this momentous occasion, with designated zones marked by flags from nations across the globe, each representing the finest military minds and leaders gathered here today. On this distinguished ground stood the world's most accomplished soldiers, high-ranking officers, and heads of state from multiple nations. Each person present carried with them years of training, countless battles fought, and the weight of their nation's expectations. Every individual stood ready to demonstrate their mastery, strength, and tactical wisdom. The atmosphere was charged with anticipation, a mixture of competitive spirit and mutual respect that only warriors could truly understand. Amidst this charged environment, one figure stood out, not through physical intimidation or boastful display, but through a serene presence and unwavering confidence that seemed to emanate from his very core. Captain Ibrahim Traoré of Burkina Faso entered the field with measured steps, each movement deliberate and purposeful. His face bore an expression of profound calm, and his eyes held a focus so intense that it seemed as though every step, every gesture, and every decision had been contemplated with deep thought and careful consideration. Ibrahim's arrival did not go unnoticed. Subtle whispers began to ripple through the crowd of observers and participants alike. Some spectators wondered aloud how a political leader would demonstrate military expertise among seasoned combat veterans. A few underestimated him based on his unassuming stature, while others speculated that he would crumble under the immense pressure of such a high-stakes competition. The murmurs carried a mixture of curiosity, skepticism, and in some cases barely concealed condescension. However, Traoré's very presence on that field silenced many doubts before they could fully form. His bearing made it abundantly clear that he was equipped with the principles of discipline and self-control, wisdom and leadership. Every movement he made commanded respect and dignity. There was something in the way he carried himself, a quiet authority that spoke louder than any words could, that began to shift perceptions even before the exercises commenced. The training exercises Ibrahim was about to undertake had been thoroughly briefed to all participants days before. This was no ordinary military drill or simple physical challenge. Rather, it was an international assessment of leadership capability and tactical wisdom, where physical prowess would be tested alongside mental acuity and strategic thinking. Every action undertaken by each participant would not only reflect their personal honor, but would serve as a representation of their entire nation on the world stage. For Ibrahim Traoré, the stakes could not have been higher. He understood with crystal clarity that he carried the reputation of Burkina Faso on his shoulders. He knew that victory here would not come through brute strength alone, but through the careful application of knowledge, strategy, and wisdom. His approach would need to demonstrate that true power lies not in the muscles of the body, but in the clarity of the mind and the strength of one's principles. As Traoré moved toward the center of the field, he took a moment to survey his surroundings and assess his potential competitors. He observed experienced generals whose very presence commanded rooms, physically imposing soldiers whose muscles seemed carved from stone, and individuals whose reputations preceded them, men and women whose names were spoken with reverence in military academies around the world. The whispers around him grew slightly louder. Will he succeed in this competition? Some asked with genuine curiosity. Can wisdom truly overcome raw power? Others wondered, yet Ibrahim showed no reaction whatsoever to the speculation. His attention remained fixed solely on the present moment, and each step he took was balanced and calculated with meticulous planning. His inner monologue was focused and clear. This is not about proving myself to them. This is about honoring my country and my people. The initial phase of the exercises began with foundational activities designed to test basic military competencies. These included obstacle courses, endurance tests, and precision drills that would separate the merely competent from the truly exceptional. The course itself was a marvel of military engineering. Walls to scale, trenches to traverse, rope bridges suspended over simulated chasms, and tire runs that tested both speed and agility. As participants lined up for the first obstacle course, the energy was palpable. Soldiers from various nations stretched their muscles, psyching themselves up with aggressive postures and loud exhalations. Some engaged in last-minute strategizing with their teammates, while others stood in silent focus, visualizing their path through the challenges ahead. Ibrahim approached each task with remarkable calm, maintaining his focus and composure throughout. His movements were economical and efficient, wasting no energy on unnecessary flourishes or displays of ego. While others attacked the obstacles with brute force, Ibrahim moved with a fluid grace that suggested years of training and deep body awareness. He didn't rush, he flowed. When a larger, more physically imposing participant attempted to demonstrate dominance through aggressive displays of strength, Ibrahim responded with appropriate balance and tactical wisdom, neutralizing the challenge without causing any harm or escalating the confrontation. His responses were measured and proportionate, showing a deep understanding of when to assert oneself and when to redirect energy more productively. One particular incident stood out. A massive Russian sergeant, built like a tank and covered in tactical gear that emphasized his intimidating presence, had been making dismissive comments about the politicians playing soldier. As they moved through a hand-to-hand combat drill, this sergeant deliberately attempted to overpower Ibrahim with a crushing bear hug technique designed to immobilize and humiliate. The crowd watched with bated breath, expecting to see Ibrahim overwhelmed by the sheer size difference. But what happened next would become one of the most replayed moments of the entire training exercise. Ibrahim didn't resist the force directly. Instead, he shifted his center of gravity by mere inches, adjusted his angle by the smallest degree, and suddenly the Russian sergeant found himself off balance, his own momentum working against him. With minimal effort, Ibrahim guided him gently but firmly to the ground, never losing his composed expression. The Russian sergeant lay there for a moment, genuinely shocked. Then, to his credit, a broad smile spread across his face. He began laughing, not in mockery of himself, but in genuine appreciation of the technique he had just experienced. Rising to his feet, he offered Ibrahim a respectful salute, which Ibrahim returned with equal dignity. From that moment, the Russian became one of Ibrahim's most vocal supporters among the participants. These early performances already indicated to the observant spectators that leadership and wisdom far exceeded mere physical strength in importance. Ibrahim was not trying to overpower anyone. Rather, he was demonstrating a different kind of strength altogether, one rooted in self-mastery and strategic thinking. After completing the first set of exercises, Ibrahim paused for several moments to observe the training base more comprehensively. He noted the attention of the participants, the facilities and resources of the training base, and the significance of each exercise in the overall assessment. He understood deeply that every movement, every decision, and every reaction would serve as a measure not only of his personal capability, but also of Burkina Faso's honor and standing in the international community. Every person present on that field could feel that this one individual's presence was generating respect without him having to speak a single word. His actions spoke for him, and they spoke volumes about the kind of leader he was and the values he represented. In that moment, Ibrahim Traoré made a firm resolution within himself. He would not merely participate in these exercises. He would impress everyone present with his wisdom, his discipline, his self-control, and his confident leadership. His calm demeanor, his razor-sharp focus, and his commanding presence all conveyed that he could prove his capability before any experienced soldier with the same steadiness and impactful presence that had become his hallmark. Ibrahim Traoré's journey to this international training base had begun days earlier when he departed from Burkina Faso. He traveled toward an international facility where military personnel and leaders from around the world had gathered for what promised to be one of the most challenging assessments of military leadership in recent years. Seated in the aircraft, Ibrahim gazed out through the small window at the world passing below. He saw the endless blue sky stretching to infinity, the vast ocean spreading beneath him like a wrinkled sheet of azure silk, and the profound silence that seemed to envelop everything at this altitude. Every moment of that journey reminded him of his homeland and the tremendous responsibility he carried on behalf of his people. His thoughts during the flight were contemplative and serious. He reflected on the fact that in the field ahead, he would not only need to demonstrate his personal skills, but also serve as a representative of his ent. Our nation, the weight of this responsibility sat comfortably on his shoulders, not as a burden, but as a sacred trust that he had accepted willingly. Inside the aircraft, there was a profound silence, yet within Ibrahim's mind, countless thoughts circulated like a whirlwind. He recalled his military training from years past, reflected on the experiences that had shaped him as a leader, and mentally reviewed his leadership skills. He prepared himself psychologically for what lay ahead, knowing that every decision, every action, and every breath would become evidence of his nation's dignity and honor. Closing his eyes, Ibrahim took a deep breath and balanced his energy. He steadied his heart and mind for the challenges that awaited him, engaging in mental exercises that had served him well in past moments of pressure. He visualized success not as personal glory, but as bringing honor to his people and his nation. When the aircraft finally descended toward the training base, a powerful gust of wind swept across the facility, carrying with it the mingled scents of the ocean and metal, the distinctive smell of a military installation. Flags from various nations fluttered in the breeze. Japan, South Korea, Australia, the United States, and many others, each representing proud military traditions and accomplished warriors. Some of the larger, more physically imposing soldiers cast glances at Ibrahim's modest stature and whispered among themselves, making assumptions based purely on appearance. However, Ibrahim remained focused and unmoved by such superficial judgments. He was committed to his purpose, centered in his mission, and unshakable in his resolve. Traoré took time to assess the base thoroughly. He observed the facilities, absorbed the atmosphere, noted the stress and competitive energy in the air, and studied the environment in which he would be tested. Yet his face maintained that same expression of calm, that same balance, that same focus that had become his signature. His entire demeanor communicated clearly. He would not be intimidated or pressured by anyone or anything. The activities of the first day commenced with registration procedures, basic exercises, and preliminary testing designed to establish baseline capabilities for all participants. Ibrahim participated in every exercise with careful attention and tactical wisdom, approaching each task methodically. When facing larger and more aggressive competitors, he continued to demonstrate his capability through balance, strategy, and wisdom, rather than attempting to match them in brute force. As evening approached, Ibrahim walked toward the shoreline. The gentle waves lapped at his feet, and he took deep breaths of the salt-laden air. In the quiet of his heart, he offered a prayer that he might complete this competition with patience, wisdom, and strategic planning, and that he might elevate the honor of his people. He knew that the coming days would test not just physical strength but national pride and true leadership. That night, alone with his thoughts, Ibrahim engaged in deep reflection about what these exercises truly meant. This was about more than personal achievement. It was about demonstrating to the world what Burkina Faso represented, what values his people held dear, and what kind of leadership could emerge from a nation that others might overlook or underestimate. Among the most challenging exercises was a 10-kilometer cross-country run in which each participant had to run while carrying a 25-kilogram weighted pack. Many large and powerful soldiers started with great speed, surging ahead with confidence in their physical conditioning. However, the intense sun and heavy burden gradually depleted their strength, causing many to slow significantly or even stop to rest. During this trial, Ibrahim Traoré maintained a steady pace and controlled breathing. While others began rapidly then faded, he kept his speed consistent and his breathing balanced, taking each step with careful planning. Rather than exhausting himself quickly, he ran with continuous and strong strides, demonstrating before his fellow soldiers an excellent display of wisdom, patience, and balance. His performance in this endurance test began to change how others viewed him. Those who had laughed or made dismissive comments at the beginning now watched in silent respect, as this political leader outpaced many career soldiers through superior strategy and mental discipline. By midday, the training exercises shifted toward close combat and unarmed fighting demonstrations. Other soldiers relied on their raw power and aggressive attacks, launching themselves at opponents with overwhelming force. However, Ibrahim Traoré answered every strike with intelligence, wisdom, and composure. He read his opponent's movements like an open book, maintained awareness of timing and distance with precision, and expended his energy only at those moments when it was truly necessary. Every movement. He made reflected patience, balance, and subtle skill, the true hallmarks of leadership and wisdom rather than mere physical dominance. His approach had a profound impact on the other participants. Soldiers who had previously mocked him now watched silently, observing Ibrahim's every move and technique with focused attention. His every step, every angle, and every movement revealed the composure and wisdom of an experienced leader. Ibrahim was not simply performing physical exercises. He was also demonstrating mental and tactical training, establishing through his every action a new lesson for the other soldiers to contemplate and learn from. When night fell and most people at the training base were resting, Ibrahim walked toward the shoreline with its gentle waves. The soft sand beneath his feet, the rhythmic sound of the ocean, and the light coolness of the evening breeze brought him a sense of peace and tranquility that recharged his spirit. In the quiet of his heart, he prayed that in the coming days he would compete with honor for his country and his people, and that through his tactical wisdom and disciplined approach, he would earn respect on the global stage. These exercises were not merely physical preparation, but deep mental wisdom, patience, and training in national representation. Every action, every breath, and every step reflected his leadership and his nation's honor. The participants from around the world were gradually becoming convinced of Ibrahim's patience, wisdom, and balance. They began to see that there was something different about this man, something that transcended the typical military virtues and touched upon deeper principles of human excellence. In the light evening breeze and the sound of the ocean waves, Ibrahim Traoré walked again toward the shore. He was alone, but this solitude served as a spiritual and mental time of focus for him. While the world's finest soldiers and leaders faced each other on the field, Ibrahim understood that true preparation meant steadying the world within himself. Every step and every breath constituted a silent exercise for him, a preparation that was strengthening his soul and mind for the trials ahead. Ibrahim closed his eyes and took deep breaths, reflecting on his past training, his experiences, and the responsibilities he carried for his people. His thinking was crystal clear. Leadership is not merely a matter of strength, but of patience, wisdom, and the insight to make the right decision at the right time. Every movement he made on the field represented Burkina Faso, and his nation's dignity was connected to his steps. He reviewed his military experience in his heart, feeling again every technique, every step, every angle he had learned over the years. He knew that the competition would not only be physical, but also a test of mental capacity and tactical wisdom. Where others would boast about their physical strength, he would distinguish himself through composure, knowledge, and balanced thinking. In the silence, he prayed for wisdom, patience, and correct decision-making ability. He knew that true victory was not just about winning, but about presenting national dignity, principles, and leadership. For him, real strength lay not in the body, but in a clear mind and pure heart. After Ibrahim Traoré's first impressive performances, news of his name and skills spread like lightning throughout the entire base. Videos from the field and training recordings began traveling through air routes to other bases and officers around the world. Everywhere, people were astonished to see how a president of modest stature could impress a powerful opponent so thoroughly through tactical wisdom, calm composure, and strategic planning. The video footage captured moments that defied conventional military wisdom. In one clip, Ibrahim could be seen calmly deflecting a strike from an opponent who outweighed him by at least 50 kilograms. In another, he maintained perfect balance while 3 separate opponents attempted to overwhelm him simultaneously during a tactical defense exercise. Each video demonstrated not just physical skill, but a kind of situational awareness that seemed almost supernatural. Social media platforms frequented by military personnel buzzed with discussion. Forums dedicated to martial arts and tactical training dissected every movement, frame by frame. Some users initially claimed the videos must be edited or staged, but those who had been present at the base quickly verified their authenticity. The debate shifted from "is this real?" to "how is this possible?" Military analysts from various nations began writing reports about what they termed the Traoré phenomenon. Some attributed his success to luck or circumstance, but most participants were saluting Ibrahim's combination of knowledge, patience, and balance. They recognized that what they had witnessed was not a fluke, but the result of years of disciplined training and deep understanding of both combat and human nature. One particularly astute analysis came from a retired French general who had spent decades studying asymmetric warfare and unconventional tactics. In an article that quickly became required reading in several military academies, he wrote, "Captain Traoré has demonstrated what many of us have long theorized but rarely seen executed so perfectly, that true martial mastery is not about imposing your will through force, but about achieving your objectives through minimum necessary intervention. He fights as water flows, yielding when faced with obstacles, yet ultimately reaching its destination with inexorable certainty. Ibrahim showed no trace of ostentation or pride in his accomplishments. When approached by journalists seeking interviews, he politely declined most requests, offering only brief, humble statements when pressed. He knew that his purpose was not personal fame but the representation of Burkina Faso and the protection of its dignity. Every move, every decision, and every response served this principle, that the world would recognize and respect Burkina Faso's leadership. The videos and news spread rapidly across the global stage. Officers who had previously underestimated Ibrahim now watched his movements with careful attention. Many people began trying to replicate Ibrahim's tactical wisdom, seeking to understand how patience, balance, and strategic planning could bring even the most formidable opponent under control. Ibrahim's performance impressed heads of state and officers from around the world. He began receiving informal invitations to various training and practical sessions so that he could share his wisdom and thinking with others. Ibrahim's presence proved that leadership is not just about strength, but about knowledge, patience, and making the right move at the right time. Some national leaders were initially concerned about this approach. They worried that if traditional principles and conventional wisdom were incorporated into training exercises, they might prove inadequate against modern weapons and machinery. However, Ibrahim and his approach made it clear that every method has its place and importance, and true victory is achieved by those who know how to apply wisdom and knowledge at the appropriate moment. Late one night, Ibrahim sat in a quiet corner of the base, engaged in deep meditation and reflection. The focus of his thoughts remained singular, maintaining his country's dignity, his people's honor, and his leadership in every circumstance. His wisdom, his calm, and his moral strength had now become an example for the world to observe and study. Gradually, the world had begun recognizing Ibrahim Traoré as a leader, an embodiment of wisdom, and a symbol of national pride. His reputation was growing not through self-promotion, but through the quiet demonstration of excellence and principle. However, not everyone was pleased with this development. There was one man who found all of this intolerable: Staff Sergeant Blake Donovan, known throughout the military world as Iron Hand. In the United States Marines, his identity was built on strength, aggressive approach, and unyielding hands. His massive physique, broad shoulders, and unmatched power were sources of fear for everyone who encountered him. When Blake watched Ibrahim's videos, he was left stunned and incredulous. It was difficult for him to accept that a man whom he surpassed in both height and strength could defeat anyone through wisdom, calm, and strategic planning. This was not merely a competition for him, but a mental challenge that struck at the core of his identity as a fighter. Several days later, during a training exercise, Blake Donovan directly challenged Ibrahim. His footsteps on the metal floor created echoing sounds like the announcement of an approaching storm. With a taunting tone, he declared, "So you're the one everyone's talking about. Tomorrow we'll see how your wisdom stands up against my strength." Ibrahim looked at Blake with his characteristically calm gaze. His eyes held no fear, no excessive aggression, only confidence, wisdom, and the dignity of his nation. "I am no one's enemy," he replied evenly. "But if the purpose is to learn, then I am prepared." His soft but firm voice silenced Blake momentarily, and for the first time the American sergeant felt that Ibrahim's true strength lay in his spirit, knowledge, and inner fortitude rather than physical prowess. That night, Ibrahim again made his way to the shoreline. The soft sand, the ocean waves, and the cool breeze served as a source of refreshment for him. He reviewed in his heart every move, every strategy, and every tactical plan, ensuring that whatever the next day might bring, he would be capable of making the right decision in every moment. Ibrahim knew that tomorrow's competition would not merely test physical strength, but would examine national dignity, leadership, wisdom, and patience. He was fully prepped. And it was clear that he would stand before any aggressive opponent with his principles, his wisdom, and his balance intact. This challenge was not just between two individuals, but represented the dignity of Burkina Faso itself. Ibrahim's calm and wisdom in the face of Blake Donovan's challenge had become a lesson for soldiers around the world. Sitting on the sand, Ibrahim closed his eyes and took deep breaths. With each inhalation and exhalation, he balanced the energy within himself. He reviewed in his heart his past training, his military experiences, and the responsibilities he carried for his people. Every moment reminded him that this exercise was not merely an opportunity for personal success, but a true test of Burkina Faso's dignity and national representation. He refreshed in his mind all his training exercises and tactical wisdom, envisioning every possible response to his opponent Blake Donovan and other powerful participants. Ibrahim's techniques clearly reflected balance, patience, and knowledge. He knew that true victory lay not in physical strength alone, but in mental calm, wisdom, and strategic planning. During his meditation, he prayed in his heart, "O Creator, grant me wisdom, patience, and the ability to make correct decisions. May my actions reflect my nation's dignity and align with my principles." After this prayer, a new determination arose within him that he would pass through the coming day not just with personal skill, but with success in representing his entire nation. In the silence of the night, Ibrahim reviewed every training exercise. Every step, every angle, every movement was a lesson for him, part of both mental and physical preparation. He knew that his opponent would attack not just with strength, but also with tactical thinking and planning. Therefore, his preparation was complete, balanced, and ready for every possible scenario. Finally, he gazed toward the ocean. The gentle waves and cool breeze brought peace to his heart. He knew that the coming day would test not only physical capability, but also moral character and tactical wisdom. Every breath, every moment reassured him that while maintaining his nation's dignity, he would make his name shine before the world. The morning light painted the training field in golden hues as dawn broke over the international base. Military personnel and heads of state from around the world had gathered, and all eyes were fixed on just two figures: Ibrahim Traoré and his experienced, massive opponent, Staff Sergeant Blake Donovan, known as Iron Hand. Blake's physical stature, strength, and aggressive reputation were sources of intimidation for everyone present. The atmosphere in the arena was electric with tension. Spectators had arrived early to secure the best viewing positions. Camera crews from various nations had set up equipment to document what many anticipated would be a defining moment of the entire training program. Military attachés whispered into secure phones, providing real-time updates to their superiors back home. The air itself seemed to vibrate with anticipation. Blake Donovan was a legend in military circles. His record was impeccable, undefeated in over 70 documented combat exercises across a decade-long career. He had earned his nickname Iron Hand not through cruelty but through the undeniable, relentless nature of his technique. When Iron Hand grabbed hold of an opponent, that opponent went down. It was a law of nature as reliable as gravity, or so everyone had believed until today. The crowd of leaders and soldiers stood holding their breath, awaiting this historic confrontation. The question on everyone's mind was clear. How would a president of modest stature and calm demeanor stand against this giant of a fighter like Iron Hand? Some had placed informal wagers, with odds heavily favoring Blake. Others watched with a mixture of concern and morbid curiosity, worried they were about to witness a humiliation rather than a competition. Blake stepped onto the field with deliberate intensity. The width of his shoulders, the power in his arms, and the arrogance in his stride announced his confidence to everyone watching. This was a man who had built his entire identity on physical dominance, and he expected this encounter to follow the same pattern as countless others before it. His pre-fight ritual was well known, a series of aggressive movements designed to intimidate opponents before a single blow was even exchanged. As Blake performed this ritual, pounding his fists together with sounds like clapping thunder, rolling his massive shoulders and fixing Ibrahim with a stare meant to break resolve, something unexpected happened. Ibrahim simply watched with mild interest, his expression never changing from that baseline calm that had become his signature. He neither looked away in fear nor stared back in challenge. He simply observed, as one might observe a storm from a safe shelter, acknowledging its power without being threatened by it. This lack of reaction seemed to unsettle Blake more than any counter-intimidation could have. For the first time in recent memory, his pre-fight ritual seemed to be having no effect whatsoever. A flicker of uncertainty crossed his features, quickly suppressed but noticed by the more observant spectators. The match began. Blake launched his first strike with full force, demonstrating his complete power from the very beginning. His signature move was a combination attack, a feint with the left hand to draw the opponent's guard, followed immediately by a devastating right hook that had knocked out countless opponents over the years. It was a technique polished to perfection through thousands of repetitions. However, Ibrahim responded to every attack with the same calm, the same wisdom, and the same balance for which he had become known. He read his opponent's movements like a master strategist studying a chess board, maintained awareness of distance and positioning, and delivered impactful responses at precisely the right moments. When Blake's right hook came, and it came with terrifying speed and power, Ibrahim was simply not where Blake expected him to be. He had shifted his position by inches, just enough that the devastating blow passed harmlessly through empty air. Every movement Ibrahim made was a demonstration of leadership, knowledge, and meticulous planning. He did not try to match Blake's aggression with equal aggression. Instead, he redirected it, used it against itself, and demonstrated that superior strategy could neutralize superior strength. It was a practical demonstration of principles as old as warfare itself, that the greatest victory comes not from overpowering your opponent, but from making their strength irrelevant. Ibrahim blocked every aggressive strike and redirected his opponent's energy back toward him, rendering the attacks ineffective. Even Blake's heavy pushes and powerful assaults were controlled through Ibrahim's balance and wisdom. Every eye in the field saw the brilliance of patience, calm, and wisdom shining through his techniques. As the match progressed, a transformation began to occur in the crowd. The initial skepticism gave way to fascination, then to amazement, and finally to something approaching reverence. People stopped whispering predictions of Ibrahim's defeat and instead began asking each other in hushed, awed tones, "How is he doing this?" Blake, for his part, was experiencing something entirely new and deeply unsettling. For the first time in his storied career, he felt not just challenged but outmatched, and not in the way he understood. He wasn't being overpowered. His opponent wasn't stronger or faster. Instead, he felt like he was fighting shadows, like every technique he attempted was anticipated before he even fully committed to it. It was as if Ibrahim could read the intentions written in his muscles and nervous system before his conscious mind had even finalized the decision to act. The spectators were witnessing something remarkable, a complete reimagining of what strength and victory truly meant. They saw that physical power, while impressive, was ultimately subordinate to mental clarity, strategic thinking, and deep self-mastery. Military doctrines emphasizing overwhelming force and physical conditioning were being quietly questioned by every officer present who had the wisdom to understand what they were watching. Finally, at an appropriate moment, Ibrahim slightly destabilized Blake's balance with a precise but measured move, taking him completely under control. It wasn't a dramatic throw or a devastating strike. Instead, it was something far more profound. Ibrahim had maneuvered Blake into a position where any movement the larger man might make would only worsen his situation. He was trapped not by force but by geometry, physics, and the inexorable logic of superior positioning. Blake froze for several moments, his tactical mind analyzing the situation and reaching the inevitable conclusion. He was defeated, not through injury or exhaustion, but through being comprehensively outmaneuvered. The realization was both humbling and strangely enlightening. Slowly, with great dignity, his knees touched the ground in a formal gesture of submission and respect. A profound silence fell over the field as everyone realized what they had just witnessed. This wasn't just one soldier defeating another. It was a demonstration of principles that transcended individual combat and spoke to deeper truths about leadership, wisdom, and human excellence. Everyone had seen that the true meaning of victory is not simply about knocking someone down, but about demonstrating wisdom, balance, and national dignity. In those final moments, Blake bowed his head and saluted Ibrahim's knowledge, calm, and skill with genuine respect. Ibrahim, in turn, took a respectful step back, showing that this victory was not personal, but was based on national honor and principles. Heads of state and soldiers from around the world stood and offered their salutes to Ibrahim. The soldiers and leaders present on the field were now completely impressed by Ibrahim's wisdom. His calm, strategic planning, and patience in the face of a fighter like Iron Hand represented not just a military victory, but a human and moral triumph. Blake Donovan approached Ibrahim, extended his hand, and said with sincerity, "You truly are different. This victory is not just of the body, but also of heart, mind, and wisdom." Ibrahim smiled and responded, "This victory belongs to my nation, Burkina Faso, and to our principles. True courage always lies not in aggressive strength, but in respect, wisdom, and patience." Videos and photographs spread around the world within hours. Leaders praised Ibrahim's approach, and some began incorporating his wisdom into their own training programs. Ibrahim made it clear that every form of wisdom has its place, and true success belongs to those who choose the right method at the right time. In the golden light of evening, Ibrahim and Blake stood by the ocean shore, silently saluting each other in mutual respect. They were no longer merely opponents, but had become examples of dignity, maturity, and leadership for the entire world to witness and learn from. This competition became a message of Burkina Faso's dignity and honor. Ibrahim Traoré had proven that true victory lies not in bringing someone down, but in maintaining one's principles, one's nation's honor, and the wisdom of one's character. This day became an example for generations to come, demonstrating that balance, wisdom, and national pride constitute real strength. In the silence of the night, Ibrahim Traoré looked up at the sky filled with stars. He offered a silent prayer and made a covenant in his heart that he would always stand with his country, his principles, and his nation's dignity. This victory became a memorable moment for Burkina Faso, and Ibrahim's name became permanently established in the world as a symbol of respect and wisdom. The impact of Ibrahim's performance extended far beyond the training base. Military academies began studying his techniques not just as combat maneuvers, but as demonstrations of leadership philosophy. His approach became a case study in how traditional wisdom could be applied in modern contexts, how patience could overcome aggression, and how true strength emanated from character rather than muscle. Young officers from multiple nations requested opportunities to train with Ibrahim or at least to observe his methods. He graciously accepted some of these invitations, always emphasizing that what he demonstrated was not about personal glory, but about national values and the principles that guided his people. In Burkina Faso, news of Ibrahim's achievements was received with immense pride and celebration. The people saw in his success not just a military victory, but validation of their national character and values. They recognized that their leader had represented them with honor on the world stage, demonstrating that their nation, though perhaps overlooked by larger powers, possessed wisdom and strength that commanded respect. International media coverage of the events highlighted several key themes. Analysts noted that Ibrahim's performance challenged conventional assumptions about military capability and leadership. They observed that his success suggested a need to reconsider how military training and leadership development were approached globally. Some commentators focused on the symbolic significance of the confrontation between Ibrahim and Blake Donovan. They saw it as representative of a larger dynamic in international relations, the contrast between approaches that prioritized overwhelming force versus those that emphasized strategic wisdom and cultural strength. Academic institutions invited Ibrahim to speak at conferences and symposiums on leadership, military strategy, and international relations. His speeches were always measured and thoughtful, emphasizing universal principles rather than promoting any particular ideology or system. He spoke about the importance of understanding one's purpose, maintaining composure under pressure, and leading with both strength and compassion. In quieter moments, Ibrahim often reflected on what had transpired at the international training base. He thought about how easily things could have gone differently, how narrow the line sometimes was between success and failure, between honor and disgrace. He recognized that his victory had come not from any superhuman ability, but from years of preparation, from a lifetime of learning and growth, from the support of his people and the strength of his convictions. He understood that he had been fortunate to have teachers and mentors who had instilled in him the values and skills that proved decisive in those crucial moments. Ibrahim also thought about Blake Donovan and the respect that had developed between them despite their initial confrontation. He appreciated that Blake had shown the courage to acknowledge defeat gracefully and the wisdom to learn from the experience. In many ways, Blake's response to losing was as admirable as Ibrahim's approach to competing. This reflection led Ibrahim to a deeper understanding of what competition and conflict truly meant. He realized that the goal was never to humiliate or diminish an opponent, but rather to test oneself, to discover one's capabilities and limitations, and ultimately to grow as a person and as a leader. He thought about how this principle applied not just to individual competitions, but to relations between nations. Countries competed for resources, influence, and prestige, but the wisest approach was one that sought mutual respect and recognition of each nation's unique strengths rather than simple domination. When the time came for Ibrahim to return to Burkina Faso, there was a feeling of both satisfaction and responsibility that accompanied him. He had represented his nation well, had earned respect on the international stage, and had demonstrated capabilities that some had doubted. Yet he knew that this success brought with it increased expectations and responsibilities. The flight home gave him time to contemplate what came next. How would he apply the lessons learned at the training base to his role as a leader of his nation? How could the principles that had served him so well in individual competition translate to the complex challenges of governance and nation-building? Upon his arrival in Burkina Faso, Ibrahim was greeted with celebrations and expressions of national pride. People lined the streets, waving flags and cheering their leader who had brought such honor to their country. Yet even in these moments of celebration, Ibrahim maintained his characteristic humility and composure. He addressed his people, thanking them for their support and emphasizing that his success belonged to the entire nation, not to him alone. He spoke about the importance of the values that had guided him: patience, wisdom, strategic thinking, and unwavering commitment to principles. He encouraged his fellow citizens to embody these same values in their daily lives, in their work, in their communities, and in their interactions with others. In the months following his return, Ibrahim worked to institutionalize the lessons from the international training competition. He established new programs within Burkina Faso's military that emphasized not just physical conditioning and weapons training, but also strategic thinking, cultural awareness, and ethical leadership. The first of these programs was the National Institute for Strategic Leadership, a facility designed to train officers not just in combat tactics, but in the broader dimensions of military leadership. The curriculum included philosophy, psychology, conflict resolution, and cultural studies alongside traditional military subjects. Ibrahim personally reviewed the curriculum and often visited to engage with students in discussions about leadership challenges. One innovative aspect of the program was what Ibrahim called wisdom councils, regular sessions where officers of different ranks could discuss complex scenarios without the constraints of military hierarchy. Junior officers were encouraged to challenge senior officers' assumptions, not out of disrespect, but as a way to ensure that the best ideas rose to the top regardless of their source. This approach, radical in military contexts, began producing officers who could think independently while still operating effectively within command structures. He created exchanges with other nations, including those whose representatives he had competed against at the international base. These exchanges allowed soldiers and officers from Burkina Faso to learn from their counterparts abroad while also sharing their own unique perspectives and capabilities. The first such exchange was, fittingly, with Blake Donovan's unit in the United States Marines. Blake himself championed the program, having become one of Ibrahim's most ardent advocates. He spent 3 months in Burkina Faso, training alongside local forces and learning the techniques that had so impressed him during their confrontation. In turn, he taught advanced close-quarters combat techniques and shared insights from his years of experience. The mutual respect and learning that developed became a model for military cooperation that transcended simple arms agreements or joint exercises. Ibrahim also recognized that military strength alone did not constitute national strength. He worked to apply the same principles of wisdom, patience, and strategic planning to economic development, education, healthcare, and other crucial areas of governance. He understood that true national security came from having an educated, healthy, and prosperous population as much as from military capability. In education, he implemented programs that emphasized critical thinking and problem-solving over rote memorization. He argued that the same principles that made for effective soldiers, situational awareness, strategic thinking, adaptability, were equally valuable for citizens in any profession. Schools began teaching decision-making frameworks and ethical reasoning alongside traditional subjects. Healthcare initiatives focused on preventive medicine and community health education, recognizing that a healthy population was more resilient and capable. Economic programs emphasized sustainable development and skills training, creating pathways for young people to contribute meaningfully to their nation's growth. Each initiative reflected the same core philosophy: that patient, strategic investment in fundamentals would yield better long-term results than short-term, flashy projects. The international recognition that came from his performance at the training base opened new diplomatic doors for Burkina Faso. Other nations that might previously have overlooked his country now sought partnerships and engagement. Ibrahim leveraged this attention carefully, always ensuring that any agreements or collaborations served the interests of his people first and foremost. Trade agreements were negotiated with an emphasis on fair terms rather than quick gains. Foreign investment was welcomed, but carefully regulated to ensure it contributed to local development rather than simply extracting resources. International partnerships in education and technology transfer were prioritized over military aid packages. Through it all, Ibrahim maintained the same patient, strategic approach that had served him so well in other contexts, never rushing into agreements that might look good in the short term but prove disadvantageous over time. Years after the events at the international training base, Ibrahim Traoré's legacy continued to grow and evolve. He became known not just as the warrior president who had defeated Iron Hand, but as a thoughtful leader who had transformed his nation and contributed to broader conversations about leadership, power, and human excellence. Young people throughout Burkina Faso and beyond looked to him as an example of what could be achieved through dedication, principle, and wisdom. His story was taught in schools, analyzed in military academies, and discussed in leadership seminars around the world. Yet Ibrahim himself remained fundamentally unchanged by fame and recognition. He continued to wake each morning with the same sense of responsibility he had always carried, the same commitment to his people, and the same values that had guided him throughout his life. He would still walk along shorelines when he needed to think, still engage in the meditative practices that centered his mind and spirit, and still approach each challenge with the same balanced combination of confidence and humility that had become his hallmark. In the end, Ibrahim Traoré's greatest victory was not over any opponent in a training field, but over the very human temptations of pride, arrogance, and the corruption that often comes with power. He proved that it was possible to achieve great things while remaining grounded in principle, to earn respect without demanding it, and to lead with both strength and compassion. His story served as a reminder that true leadership transcends military capability or political authority. It is measured instead by one's character, one's commitment to principle, and one's dedication to serving something greater than oneself. In this, Ibrahim Traoré had achieved a victory that would endure far longer than any triumph on a battlefield, a victory of the human spirit that would inspire generations yet to come. The golden sun that had shone on that international training ground years before had illuminated more than just a competition. It had revealed a truth about human potential and leadership that the world needed to see. That wisdom, patience, and principle could indeed overcome brute force, that quiet confidence could be more powerful than loud boasting, and that a small nation could produce leaders of world-class caliber. Ibrahim Traoré had carried the honor of Burkina Faso onto that field, and he had returned it magnified and enhanced, a beacon of pride for his people and an example of excellence for the world. This was his legacy, his gift to his nation, and his contribution to humanity's ongoing quest for better, wiser, and more principled leadership. The story of the warrior president would be told and retold, inspiring those who heard it to seek their own paths of excellence, to embody their own values with courage and conviction, and to lead with both strength and wisdom in whatever arena life placed them. And in this way, Ibrahim Traoré's influence would extend far beyond his time, far beyond his nation, and far beyond anything he might have imagined when he first stepped onto that sun-drenched trot. Inning ground to demonstrate what true leadership really meant.